80% of children actually outgrow it by the age of 5, which is a huge number and can be really kind of reassuring for parents. But there are actually, and I'm going to get a little bit scientific now, but I think this is really useful kind of information to share because this is stuff that I just didn't know when I started this journey. There's actually 2 different types of cow's milk allergy. There's what's called an IgE mediated allergy, which is an instant reaction, which happens kind of straight away from having cow's milk up to kind of 2 hours after. And that's what you'd probably think of when you think of swelling, hives, instant vomiting, like a really kind of instant reaction.
And we're rolling. Welcome to the Parenting Truths podcast. Today I'm joined by mum of 2, Kate Lancaster, also known as Dairy Free Mum. Thanks for joining me, Kate.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks so much for having me.
So it's great to have you on today, and thank you for jumping on to sort of share your journey. Obviously, you show up every day on social media helping parents navigate food allergies with their little one, and you've grown a community on Instagram of, I think, almost 100,000 parents, which is unbelievable. But obviously, before we dive into all of that, are you able just to start and share a little bit about your own parenting journey and maybe what led you to start supporting parents in this area specifically?
Yeah, absolutely. So this has been a bit of a whirlwind journey for me because it's not something I ever set out specifically to do, but I'll give you a bit of background into firstly our family. So yeah, I'm my partner Mike and I kind of thought about having children kind of 6 years ago and didn't think it would necessarily be easy because I actually have endometriosis, so which obviously affects quite a lot of women and can be quite challenging in terms of fertility. So I always knew I wanted to be a mum, but didn't actually know if I'd be lucky enough for that to happen. So we were very lucky that I'd had a surgery for that. And within the year, I actually managed to get pregnant with Violet, who is now 5 and started school and getting into that whole kind of school journey, which is crazy. Basically, when she was born, we quickly kind of realized that something wasn't quite right, but didn't really know why or what, because as first-time parents, you really have no idea what's normal when it comes to babies. And to cut a long story short, we kind of went through a bit of a journey of realizing and getting diagnosed with her having cow's milk allergy. Yeah, so it was quite a surprise for us, and it was something that was totally new. Firstly, being a first-time parent and just, you know, learning how to look after a newborn and the challenges of how that affects your relationship and just suddenly the overwhelm of being a parent, but then mixed in with, well, actually, something's not quite right here and how are we going to deal with that? So basically, I decided to create an Instagram page when she was about 9 months old, initially started to just share dairy-free weaning ideas and kind of tips of how we were dealing with that journey. And yeah, 5 years later, it kind of has, developed amazingly into such a supportive community, as you say. And that's really at the heart of the Dairy-Free Mum. And what I try and do on my page is that it is a community for other parents who are going through a similar thing. And hopefully the resources that I share and recipes and tips can just help other parents feel slightly less alone with what can be quite a lonely journey at times.
And what was it that, because you said you led up to seeking help and getting diagnosed, what were the sort of red flags, so to speak, that forced you to go to seek a potential diagnosis?
So there were various things that developed with Violet from a really early age, like straight from being a newborn. I've since had a second child, Jude, and he also has cow's milk allergy, but his symptoms didn't develop until about 2 months old. Whereas with Violet, it was straight away. She had gastro issues, so issues with her tummy, and I'm going to get into detailed nappy chat, so apologies if anyone's eating. But basically that presented as really kind of mucusy nappies is the way I would describe it. So almost like really gross, slimy, green stools. really not nice. And this was really frequent. And obviously newborn babies, poop a lot, but this was really, really frequent. So 8 to 10 times a day. And she was obviously in pain and distressed in her tummy. So she would be screaming, pulling her legs up to her chest, which is, again, can be a common symptom, just seemed in real pain with it. And it's difficult as a mum, and a new first-time mum especially, to know, well, is this normal? Because I'm being told by the doctor, well, all babies cry, you're just going to have to get used to that. But I kind of sensed in my gut that it was more than that, something was going on. She also developed eczema, which again is quite a common symptom of food allergy. It is a standalone condition. So not everyone with eczema has a food allergy, but it is, it has been proven that having eczema, and especially significant eczema, does make you more likely to have food allergies. They're all related in what they call kind of atopic conditions. So eczema, allergies, hay fever, and asthma are all kind of connected as atopic conditions. And my partner, the parent's dad, actually has several allergies, has eczema, and has childhood asthma. So basically, the likelihood of us having children who had atopic conditions was greater because of his history. So I blame it all on him. But basically, right. So there was the eczema, the gastro symptoms. She had kind of a raised red rash on her face and body, which, again, the GP, when I went to see them, were quick to dismiss as kind of baby acne, which, again, a lot of these symptoms, and what allergy parents find so challenging, is that they cross over with a lot of what is considered normal baby conditions and development.
I think in isolation, in isolation, these things occur with babies. Their skin's very sensitive. But I guess if you're experiencing that, bringing it all together, it sort of, I think you said you knew in your gut something wasn't right.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I was breastfeeding, so I didn't think, or wasn't aware before this all happened, that the cow's milk protein that I was eating, and as a breastfeeding mum, could actually pass through breast milk. So that is something that even a lot of medical professionals still aren't completely clued up on. So I hear a lot of parents come to me saying, I found out my child had a milk allergy later on in life, but I was told by GPs, well, it can't pass through breast milk. That's wrong. It can. It's not common. It's rare, but it can and does happen. And thousands of other parents I speak to have gone through this, where actually they are reacting through breast milk. This isn't through formula milk, which is obviously made from cow's milk, or even when they first have yogurt for a first time. Some of them will actually react through breast milk. So because that was happening to me, I was being fobbed off a lot by the GP health visitor, who was saying, it can't be an allergy because you're breastfeeding, it's just normal baby stuff, like it'll sort itself out. But it was getting progressively worse. And I ended up doing quite a lot of my own research in the end, and speaking to different people. And one GP who I saw was really, really clued up and brilliant. And we decided to exclude all dairy, so all cow's milk protein, from my diet completely for 4 weeks. And that's what's suggested as an elimination test. And after that 4 weeks, to try and reintroduce and see if the same things happen again. And honestly, that 4 weeks, within 2 weeks, she was a completely different baby. I mean, it was amazing. Her skin cleared up. Her nappies got so much better. She was so much happier in herself. So when the 4 weeks came to an end, I was almost quite nervous to bring it, to introduce it back in. But straight away when I did, the symptoms flared up, within 24 hours. So that was enough to get a diagnosis without her even having had dairy products directly. She wasn't even weaning at that point. So it was very unexpected. But I've since learned through my page that it is, whilst it's rare, it is happening more and more and more to lots more parents. And it's something that there just needs to be a lot more knowledge and understanding about, really.
Yeah, and I think that's what you find, parents that grow Instagram accounts, in your own world, you might be the only one experiencing something, but as you start sharing more and more, and your information reaches the far lengths of the world, you realise that there are tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of parents experiencing the same thing. One thing I did want to touch on was, it sounds simple, just cut out cow's milk and dairy, but as a parent, was that difficult for you to actually manage what you were eating and, dive deep into the foods? How was that for you?
I found it really challenging at first, because if you say cut out dairy to people, most people would say, oh, I couldn't live without cheese. I couldn't live without chocolate. And there are those kind of fundamental dairy products that you think of. But I think what I found even more difficult was it sneaks into so many pre-prepared packaged foods. So, for example, certain crisps, like Frazzles, have milk in them. And so you have to become a real expert at looking for ingredients, because it isn't just about cutting out butter, cheese, yogurt, cow's milk. It's actually about eliminating all cow's milk protein.
Yeah.
So there's so many foods that you just wouldn't necessarily think about. So I did find it really, really challenging at first. Being new to that whole dairy-free world. And now, 5 years on, and having gone through it a second time with Jude, I feel a lot more confident with it, because obviously through my page, I like, finding different alternatives, and I kind of a bit of an expert now at knowing what I can have, what we can't have. But at first, it's really daunting for parents. It's a massive food group to eliminate. And I think that there's also those kind of nutritional worries people have of, oh, well, how's my child going to get enough calcium? Or, because they naturally relate dairy to a lot of, and it is very nutritious as a food group. So you have to really kind of take your time to learn about how you can replace those different nutrients, other foods that you can have that are natural sources of calcium, making sure that you're choosing the fortified milks and cheeses, etc., when you're looking at alternatives, to make sure that they still get that kind of nutrition they might be missing from not having dairy. So it is a massive learning curve and journey when it just comes to, the food side of it, really.
And would you ever look to reintroduce dairy as they grow and get older, or is it a lifelong
it's managed,
decision you need to make?
Yeah, it's managed in different ways. The positive news is that with CMPA, which is the kind of the official term for cow's milk protein allergy, 80% of children actually outgrow it by the age of 5, which is a huge, huge number and can be really kind of reassuring for parents. But there are actually, and I'm going to get a little bit scientific now, but I think this is really useful kind of information to share, because this is stuff that I just didn't know when I started this journey. There's actually 2 different types of cow's milk allergy. There's what's called an IgE-mediated allergy, which is an instant reaction, which happens kind of straight away from having cow's milk up to kind of 2 hours after. And that's what you'd probably think of when you think of swelling, hives, instant vomiting, like a really kind of instant reaction. And that can result in anaphylaxis. Not always, but it can result in anaphylaxis. So that is an IgE-mediated allergy. And then a non-IgE mediated allergy, which is what my 2 children have, is a delayed allergy where they ingest the cow's milk and then they will have the reaction anytime from 2 hours to up to 72 hours after. So it could be 2 days after having that, they then get the symptoms, which could be sickness, diarrhea, it could be rash, eczema, distress. So it can be really hard sometimes in that non-IgE category to actually recognise that those symptoms have come from that particular food. And that's been a challenge in itself. But the positive news is that, as a general rule, 80% of children will outgrow it by the age of 5. Now, if you are in the IgE immediate category, you would actually have to have kind of professional allergist hospital support in terms of trying to reintroduce. Sorry, my headphones are going. There we go. If you're in the non-IgE category, you'll hopefully be guided by a dietitian and an allergy team to reintroduce milk through what's called the milk ladder. So that is a kind of a gradual step-by-step process of introducing milk, normally from around the age of a year old or 6 months after they've last had cow's milk. So you basically start with a biscuit, because the milk is kind of, when it's being cooked, the protein is kind of broken down enough so that it's kind of quite a small amount of milk that they're actually ingesting. So you start with like a quarter of a biscuit, and then there's six steps up to cow's milk. So it goes kind of biscuit, muffin, pancake, cheese, yogurt, milk. So it's a very gradual introduction. And we've been through that process with Violet successfully. She can now tolerate all cow's milk. She's 5, which is brilliant. Jude, however, who is 2, still reacts to half a biscuit. So we then have to pause and wait again for another few months before trying that again and seeing if we can gradually climb the rungs of the ladder. So yes, hopefully there is hope, if anyone's listening and going through it, that, you know, there is hope that eventually they will outgrow it, but not all, unfortunately.
And in your experience, did you find, certainly with GPs on the NHS, that they were really supportive and sort of knew what they were looking for? Because I'm just thinking for parents with new babies who feel like, you know, their little one might have an allergy, what are the steps you recommend them taking? Is it literally just go to the GP and go from there?
It is go through to the GP. There are some things that you can do in advance of that. One thing that I would always recommend is keeping a food diary of what you're eating and or if your baby's already at weaning stage, what they've eaten, what kind of symptoms you're worried about. Take photos, take videos, anything you can show them and kind of pinpoint is really, really helpful for them. And kind of just, you know, be confident enough to share, you know, what it is that you're concerned about. I would love to sit here and say that all GPs understand food allergy and will be supportive. Unfortunately, at the moment, there does seem to be a bit of a disconnect between, you know, that first line of healthcare support, which is your GP or your health visitor, just having the real kind of like education on it. There's not enough investment happening in the NHS to these frontline, you know, support to actually be educated and up to date on allergies. It's not something that they are getting enough training on, in my opinion. And when I ask allergy parents, I actually asked recently, because it's Allergy Awareness Week this week, I actually asked them at the beginning of the week on my stories, you know, share a bit more about your diagnosis and your journey. And nearly 75% of parents responded to say that they feel that they had to battle for a diagnosis. So this is people that are going to the doctors again and again and again saying, something's not right and I'm not being believed. There is, unfortunately, a lot of parents that are being dismissed, given incorrect information, not really listened to, kind of not being heard, being told things like, well, you're breastfeeding, so it can't be an allergy. And then they find out later, when they eventually give that baby cow's milk or yogurt when they're weaning, they have an instant allergic reaction and their gut was right, but they were kind of dismissed on that way. So I feel like there's a long, long way to go to get that, you know, healthcare professional support right from the beginning, and to have people really kind of listened to and supported, because it is a scary, lonely journey. And if you feel dismissed and on the back foot when you're first, you know, experiencing that, then it can be really, really tough for parents.
And it can be quite a long journey, certainly. Obviously, every health board is different, but even getting an appointment in the UK with a GP can be a challenge. So certainly if you're going back and forth with a new baby 5-6 times, it feels like if parents have got an inkling their little one might have an allergy, they need sort of a roadmap. So the first time you go to the doctors, you know, you've got your food diary, you've maybe, you know, monitored what you're eating if you're breastfeeding and how that maybe impacts the baby. So you sort of, you're going there armed with, you know, a list of things that you've already trialed to save that endless back and forth.
Absolutely. It's something that I'm really passionate about, trying to kind of, you know, give or help parents have those tools. And actually, I've written a whole section of like checklists and things like that in my book, which isn't coming out until September, but it's hopefully going to be a really helpful tool for parents who are going through this journey. You know, it has things like a checklist of what should I take to my first GP appointment? And okay, I've now got a hospital appointment with an allergist. What can I expect? What do the tests look like? What might happen on the day? So just really hopefully giving a bit more of that roadmap, as you say, of this is what you might expect through each step of the journey.
It's amazing because obviously you probably never set out to be in this space talking about allergies. And
no.
Now, you know, it sounds like your Instagram account has grown really naturally and organically, and it's led you down this path. So are we able to talk a little bit about the book and how that came to light? Was there any resources when you were going through it, or go-to books
to be honest,
5 years ago?
No, and that is the exact reason why I've written the book. It is, and it sounds really, really cheesy, and I'm sure anyone who's written a book will say this, but for me, I wrote the book that I would have wanted to have 5 years ago. It is a cookbook. So it's got 65 recipes in it that are all dairy-free and allergy-friendly to suit other allergies for families from kind of weaning to adults. But the heart of it for me is also in those tips, that information that just wasn't accessible to me. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are some amazing resources, Allergy UK being one of them, you know, brilliant website. They have a helpline, they have downloadable fact sheets, resources. So there was definitely the information. I think what I struggled to get was those practical tips for parents from someone else who has been through the journey. And that's really what I kind of wanted to do with the book, is that kind of hybrid of information, tips. Everything's been reviewed by Lucy Upton, who's the children's dietitian on Instagram. She is an amazing paediatric dietitian. And because also, whilst I've learned a lot as an allergy parent, I'm not a medical professional, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a dietitian. So I'm very aware that whilst I think that I know a fair bit, I will always want anything I say to be, you know, backed up by somebody that has got those qualifications and can make sure that what I'm saying is, you know, accurate, backed by evidence, and kind of suitable to share with parents going through this. So Lucy's been amazing at kind of giving that kind of professional review to the book. And yeah, I'm just really hopeful that it's, you know, going to be something that is helpful for other parents that may be going through, you know, the same or similar journey to what I've done over the years.
Yeah, and I think certainly within the parenting space, other parents need a relatable figure. Obviously, there's some amazing books out there in all different areas, but often they're written by medical professionals. They're very formulaic. But obviously, someone like yourself, you're literally living it right now, aren't you? You're going through it. So, you know, those type of books can be really impactful for parents. So yeah, massive good luck with the book. Have you got any plans? So it's coming out in September, is that right?
12th of September. So it still feels like a long way away. I only announced it 3 days ago, so it's very fresh. But obviously I've been working on it for, I've been working on it for nearly 2 years, but finally announced it 2 days ago. So it's available to pre-order now, but it's not actually coming out until 12th of September. So it feels like quite a long way away, but hopefully it'll come round quickly.
And is the book accessible for parents with newborns? You said it's a recipe book specifically, but there are plenty of tips in there for parents.
Yeah, so it really is designed to support parents through the whole journey. So there's a whole chapter on different food allergies, how you might, the first symptoms, if you've got a newborn, how you might find out your child has a milk allergy. And then that kind of the steps I said around different appointments, testing, milk reintroduction. And then there's a whole chapter on weaning. So what I found myself having babies that have milk allergy is when it comes around to weaning, which, you know, I'm sure as a dad is like an exciting time as a parent, messy, like slightly intimidating. You're a bit like, what's right? What's wrong? What am I doing? Like, are they going to choke? All these worries in your head. And I think when you add food allergies into that mix, it becomes quite a daunting experience for parents. If you know already your child has a food allergy, introducing the other allergens to them can be, quite a frightening, worrying thing, because you're constantly thinking, are they going to have an allergy to egg or nuts, or what's going to happen here? So the weaning chapter in my book really focuses on it from an allergy point of view. So how specifically to introduce all those other allergens, some tips around how, you can kind of go really slow, build it up, like make sure that you're doing it safely, and kind of try and give some kind of lived in tips from my point of view of things that I found kind of helped do that in a slightly less stressful way than perhaps another weaning book where it doesn't focus so much specifically on the allergen side of things. And then there's sections on like milk alternatives, products, my store, my cupboards at home, things that I find useful to have. And then it has a whole allergy parents guide to life, which I was really passionate about in my kind of when I first put my book together, is that I wanted to cover topics that I get asked about all the time from other allergy parents, which might be things like childcare. Oh, I have to, I have to put my baby in nursery. I'm really worried about how to handle that with them, or schools. Also, I'm too scared to go to a restaurant when my baby has an allergy. What can I do? Or we want to go on holiday, but we're not sure if we're going to be able to do that because we're worried about, reactions. So I've written a whole chapter around tips on those specific milestones that parents of children with food allergies might be nervous about, and kind of, some tips to help them with those different kind of key milestones.
Because I imagine it's a very daunting prospect. Obviously, when you're in the safe zone of your own home with your baby/toddler, you've got control of everything. But there will come a time when you need to maybe lean on childcare. Your little one goes to school, and then you sort of lose that element of control, don't you?
Exactly.
Have you noticed that's one area that parents really struggle with?
100%. I think that it's one thing getting yourself to a stage where you feel confident that you can safely manage this allergy in terms of you've got it, you think, I know what I'm doing. I've figured out what they can and can't have. There's always nerves, but as you say, when you have the control, it's all on you and you feel like, okay, I can handle this. The minute that's taken out of your hands and you have to trust someone else, and that can be as much as a family member, it's just having that control slightly taken away can just make everything a lot more daunting. Will they understand? Will they even understand what dairy is? It's a really simple thing, but a lot of people think that eggs are dairy, for example, or won't realise that, they'll say, oh, is custard dairy? I didn't really, that's maybe a bit kind of blasé, but I think there's a lot of misunderstanding. So I think as a parent, you're just worried, like, is someone going to mess this up? And when the outcome can be so significant, when you're looking at children who are dealing with anaphylaxis and potential life-threatening allergic reactions, I'm so lucky that, touch wood, we're not in that boat. But I really do feel, especially for parents who are dealing with really serious life-threatening allergies, and as you say, losing that control, handing over that trust to someone, going to a different country even, where you've got the language barrier, you have, am I going to be able to get them to a hospital if I need to? There's just such a stress and mental load on parents that perhaps other people wouldn't appreciate if they hadn't been through that journey themselves. So I think anything that we can do as a community to try and offer more support, tools, resources, and just make them feel like they're not alone. This is possible. It is possible to have a child with food allergies and still enjoy all of those things, and parties and play dates and holidays and restaurants. It's just about having the tools to know, some little tricks and tools to be able to do that safely and plan ahead, really.
And have you engaged with parents across the world who have had to make some life-changing choices, like relocating and things like that, based on their little one's allergies?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the kind of the biggest change, I think, is probably around schools and childcare, where people will say that they have changed a school or had to make some tough decisions about childcare because they have felt that a setting that they've chosen or been allocated isn't allergy aware. And that can be,
right,
a massive thing for a parent. You have to feel safe and reassured that a setting is really going to handle that allergy correctly. And I think things are getting better. There's some great work that's being done around kind of allergy awareness in schools, led by the allergy team, which are another great resource if people want to look them up. But I think that there is, again, some settings that unfortunately just haven't got the right practices and policies in place for food allergies yet. And so I have heard a lot of parents that have had to, make tough decisions around changing their child's, childcare setting, or, as you say, maybe even moving to get within the catchment of a school that might be better at dealing with it. So it can definitely impact life in a really big way, I'd say.
I wanted to touch on weaning for a second, because I remember, so we've got a 6-year-old and a 16-month-old. So we've obviously gone through the weaning process twice. And I remember with Luca, my wife Laura was very sort of conscious of allergies. So we opted to go down the route of diving straight into soft, solid foods. So the more baby-led approach, because Laura was very keen on, we could isolate the foods. We could try, a soft carrot. And if there was, obviously there wouldn't be, if there was a reaction, we'd know exactly what that item of food was. Is that something you'd recommend? Like, what sort of tips do you have for parents about to enter the weaning stage?
Sure. I mean, I think I say this in the book as well, but obviously weaning is such a individual kind of process as to what feels comfortable with you. And when you have allergies, you might even be, only if you're advised by a healthcare professional, but it could be that you're advised by a healthcare professional to actually start weaning earlier than the 6 months, which is obviously the NHS recommendation. So some parents who are dealing with food allergies might be recommended to start around no earlier than 17 weeks, but that's kind of 4 and a bit months. So it's quite early. And the reason for that is because recent studies have shown that it can be beneficial to introduce peanut and egg, and specifically, but they're looking into kind of earlier introduction of other allergens might actually be a kind of positive way of preventing those allergies developing in the future. I hope I've said that correctly from a medical perspective, but I think you know what I mean. So there's been kind of, studies on introducing egg and peanut earlier can have benefits in terms of the impact of that being a food allergy later on. So if you think about those parents starting from, 4 months, that's really, really early. And generally they would be advised to only offer kind of purees at that point, because that is quite young, and to start introducing allergens earlier. But if we look at the kind of general case of 6 months, which is when my two started, personally, I did a baby-led approach with Violet. I think just because everything I seem to be seeing on social media and people that I followed, I really liked that, like you said, that kind of individual food approach. Certainly had my nerves with, suddenly giving a baby a courgette stick feels kind of bizarre, but it really worked with Violet. She really enjoyed that baby-led approach. And I definitely do think that, especially when it comes to introducing allergens, obviously you have to be very careful about offering them individually, leaving kind of 3 days in between to spot any potential reactions. So again, keeping a food diary can be really important here, because although we call them the top 9 allergens, there's 12 top allergens that UK recommend sees, but the top 9 are what we focus on with weaning. And people kind of seem to understand the introducing those individually. When you have, there's lots of other allergens not in that top 9. So, for example, there's a growing prevalence of allergies to legumes, which is like peas, lentils, chickpeas. They're becoming more common as an allergen.
Yeah.
Things like coconut, banana. There's some kind of ones that are kind of creeping up in terms of prevalence. And I think that a lot of parents would probably, who are dealing with allergies, would probably think, oh, well, I'm going to only introduce one food and wait 3 days, and then another food and wait 3 days. But Lucy, the dietitian on my book, actually has written some advice in the book around just be careful not to restrict it so much that they're not actually having that exposure to solid food enough, which is important when you're weaning, because it's really important to get them tasting different foods, having different textures. And I think that the kind of common thing with parents dealing with food allergies is to think, I'm only going to give them one thing in a week because I'm too scared that they, even if it's carrot, I'm too scared that they might react to it. But actually Lucy's tip is to kind of, try and be introducing more taste, more textures, more flavors quicker, but just be very, cautious, obviously, when it comes to those allergens in particular, and just making sure you're giving yourselves enough space between each one. So, I think in answer to your question, it's really difficult to give kind of direct advice around weaning, because I think it will ultimately come down to what that person is comfortable with. And some people will not be comfortable with baby-led weaning, and that's totally fair enough. Some people, with Violet, I did a much more mixed approach. So baby-led food plus purees, with Jude. So my second time around, I guess just because I had less time to think about it. I had less time to prepare food. I had a toddler, around at that point, and a lot of it was around convenience, just less thought through than perhaps with Violet, where I had all the time in the world to kind of prepare things. So I've done it both ways, and honestly, I think it's just whatever you feel comfortable with, and try not to compare too much to other people who are weaning and perhaps their baby is loving 100 foods and eat anything that's put in front of them. Some babies just take a lot longer to learn, the skill of eating, really. But it's a fun journey.
Yeah. A messy but fun journey, depending on which route you go down. But yeah, you made a very good point there. The experience with the second is a lot different than the first. You've got so much time to prepare food. Me and Laura were looking at Luca's weaning journey, and we used to have like extravagant meals we used to prepare for him. But with Mia, it's just like, right, we're cooking some pasta, we'll put that on the side without the salt, and it's just literally a lot different.
It is.
One thing I did want to touch on was, have you found, would you say the allergies are sort of dictated a little bit the parent you've sort of become? Has it impacted your parenting journey? Like, do you find yourself being a lot more diligent in general?
It's
so
a really
essentially
good
what
question.
I'm trying to ask is, do you think it's shaped?
I do,
Shaped
and I
the
think
parent
that
you are?
Yeah, one thing that I've been very open with on my Instagram page is I suffer with anxiety. I have a lot throughout my life, but it's definitely grown since having children. I think firstly just because parenthood is like, but when mixed with Violet's allergies, she also has asthma, and was in and out of hospital a lot in the first 2 years of her life with pneumonia, severe chest infections, week-long stays in hospital. And I think that plus the allergy and kind of always being on edge, you've always got something to stress about and think about. You can never really just breathe and relax. If you go out to a friend's house and their child opens a pack of Wotsits, you're literally like, oh my gosh, like, what's going to happen? And I think just that constant stress and being on edge has definitely increased my anxiety personally. And it's something that I get support with and deal with. I think that's probably common for a lot of parents going through an allergy journey, is that it will often, not always, obviously, but it will often have a result in anxiety, in extra stress, just in terms of, as you say, the way that you parent has to become a lot more planning ahead, thought through, much less spontaneous. I mean, maybe parents will say that it's hard to be spontaneous as parents anyway. But for example, if you go out for the day to the seaside, you can't just say, oh, this place looks good for us to pop in and eat. Let's do that. If you're dealing with allergies and especially multiple allergies, that's going to require you having planned ahead as to, is this somewhere we can go that will have a safe option? What do I need to pack with me? Make sure that they've got their medication, make sure that they've got, some people have allergy alert cards, for example, or, like allergy packs if they're dealing with, they might have EpiPens, auto injectors, things like that. So I think it just takes away a bit of that kind of freedom, and just means that you have to be planning ahead, thinking things through a lot more. And you do get used to it. So I'm not saying this is it's terrible. It is something that you get better at, that you adapt to, that becomes part of your life. But I do think it is something that 100% affects, the way you parent and the way you have to think about kind of everyday situations.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing so openly and honestly. I think it's important to bring awareness to this sort of thing. I think I had no idea of the impact it would have on day-to-day lives. So thank you for giving us a little insight into your world and also the work you do to help others. To close out, am I okay to ask 3 quick-fire general parenting questions, which I do with every guest? So you don't need to overthink them. Just share what comes to your head. Yeah. So question 1 is, knowing what you know now, what parenting advice would you give yourself before you became a parent? Okay.
I think probably and this is such a cliche, but try and enjoy those little moments more. I get in my head a lot about what's next, what's coming up next, that kind of regimented planning. I think just to try and enjoy the moments where you can, but also I would definitely say to myself, do not look at other parents and think they're perfect. They have the perfect baby that sleeps through the night. What am I doing wrong? I'm, giving myself a hard time. I gave myself such a hard time with Violet over everything. Why is my baby not happy all the time? Why is she not sleeping? Am I doing this wrong? Am I a terrible parent? You look at other people, whether that's in real life or social media, and it's so easy to assume that they've got it perfect and that everything's great. So I think that number one thing would be, just try and go easy on yourself a little bit. You're doing the absolute best you can, and nobody's perfect.
Yeah, that's a great one. What's the one thing you feel you need to work on as a parent?
Oh, patience. I am the world's most impatient person, and I really, really, really try and follow gentle parenting. Like, I really resonate with gentle parenting, and I love following accounts and getting tips on how to gentle parent. I just really find it so hard to do in practice because I just naturally am like, I've just got such a short fuse, and I find like Jude is the cutest age, he's 2.5, but also the most annoying age. And I can say that because he's my child, but he's so annoying sometimes. It's really tough when you have a little toddler who has got a mind of his own and he thinks he can do everything himself, and he can't, he's 2. And I really struggle with patience, and it's something that I'm still trying to work on a daily basis, just not losing my cool and trying to stay calm.
And it can be really tough. I mean, the thing on Instagram at the moment is the sort of 10 to 15 second reels with like the magical music in the background and parents sharing a clip of their child. And there was one that had millions of views of a 2-year-old sat on the stairs trying to do their shoelaces up. And I think the mum or the parent put a caption of like, we let her do things at her own pace. And the comments were just hilarious. And to be fair, she responded to everyone with a rebuttal about why they would wait, half an hour if she wants to do her shoelaces up. But that is just unrealistic.
It's unrealistic.
When you've got a child that needs to go to school,
you've got to get them somewhere.
The other parent is upstairs working. You're not going to wait 30 minutes.
No. I try and count to 10 in my head, and I'm like, that's it. I've had enough. I can't deal with this. It's all very nice to say in theory, but in practice, let's be honest, sometimes you just need to make things happen.
And I go through waves of motivation with the dad vibes. And at the moment, I'm really just checking my content and making sure it's realistic, because in isolation, Instagram posts can seem so ridiculous. And I go through that every month. I just need to make sure there's an element of realism in there, because you could be sending parents down. You could be having a negative impact on some of the things you share if you're creating this unrealistic expectation of parenting life.
No, I know what you mean.
So yeah, it's really important. And parents, I think, need to set social media boundaries as well in the content they consume.
Definitely.
Because you could just be inundated with this unrealistic expectation of parenthood.
100%.
And finally, to close out, what for you is the best thing about being a parent?
I would say those little moments where you connect with your child and they do something for the first time, or they say something for the first time that kind of catches you off guard, and it just fills you with this kind of feeling of like pride and love. And it's so cheesy, but just a feeling that you'd never really kind of experienced before. Like Jude is just starting to obviously talk, in sentences now, and he's learned how to say, "Love you so much, mummy." And Violet's learning to write, and she'll write me little notes, and I'll find these little notes that say, "Love you to the moon and back." And I'm just like, oh, there's just this real kind of genuine, innocent love that is just really hard to quantify and explain. But I think those little moments just kind of make all those struggles and difficulties worth it. So yeah, for me, it's just those little everyday things that just kind of make your heart swell and just think like, oh, I'm so lucky.
Yeah, and they never end, do they? Like, regardless of what age your child is, like you say, when they learn to read, when they learn to write, it is quite magical. We had a moment. So Luca was really adamant he wanted to go football training, and it's something we put off for a while. But we took him football training, and he was in a team huddle, and he was like, "Come on, team." And I'd never seen him do something like that before.
Yeah.
It was just so endearing that, oh yeah. But, and with Mia as well, she's 16 months and she's learned to say yes, which seems magical in itself.
It is.
So yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for joining me, Kate. Lots of amazing information you've shared today, and you've been open and honest about your journey. So I'm looking forward to getting this episode out there, and obviously massive good luck for the book as well. I'm sure it'll do really well, and I'm more than happy to share that across my channels as and when.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate that. And just wanted to say, as I caveated, not being a medical professional, just obviously number one thing when it comes to food allergies, get professional support, get individual guidance from healthcare professionals. Whilst my page and other social media pages do a great job, that should never replace individualized kind of professional advice. So just to caveat that, make sure you are getting, professional support.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Kate, and hopefully we'll chat soon.
All right. Thanks, Tom. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.